on West 4th Street.
Yeah.
And they had quite a,
And she was quite a character.
yeah, absolutely. And they redid the
They're in
whole
the same place.
inside. It's incredible.
They're in the same place, right?
Yeah, yeah. But the building, show you the building. You probably know these people from the cultural center.
Okay, we're gonna get started. And just so you know, the camera and mic is for a documentary that's being made about this wonderful man's life. Old Queer and Kicking?
Oh, Queer and Kicking.
We'll keep you posted. So welcome to this event celebrating Jonathan Ned Katz. Oh my God, come on, Shep. We even gave you an explicit correction. It's true. Are we good? Okay. Oh, I'm not really standing, so anyway. So welcome to our online audience as well. My name is Greg Newton. I am the co-founder with my partner, Donnie Jokum of the Bureau of General Services Queer Division, which is the space you are in right now. And the Bureau, as you probably know, is a government agency for a government that does not yet exist. And this is the service that we, thank you. I like when I get a laugh, I appreciate it. This is the service we provide, is holding this space for queer culture, queer books. And we usually have queer art on the wall, and we soon will. Tomorrow, we're going to have an opening for Charlie Welch, who will be showing some of his collages in a show titled It Will End in Tears, which I hope it won't. What else did I want to say? Oh, right. We are an all-volunteer organization. Ryan is helping us out tonight. And we survive by selling books and by your donations. So we have a suggested donation of $10. I'm going to pass around the bag. If you're able to give something, we greatly appreciate it. If you plan on buying some books, you can certainly hold on to your money and buy some books. Otherwise, if you can throw something in here, we appreciate it. There's change in the bag. And if you'd like to Venmo us, you can do that. Venmo at BGSQD. The letters are all around it.
Don't.
And it's changing.
If you're not already on our email list and you would like to be, you can sign up for that at the back of the room, and you'll get an email every other Monday about our upcoming events, of which we have many. And before I introduce Jonathan, I want to briefly read land acknowledgement. So the Bureau acknowledges that our organization operates on the unceded land of the Munsee Lenape. We are actively seeking to partner with and provide material support to a local queer Indigenous organization. And we hope to make an announcement about this partnership in the near future. But in the meantime, we encourage you to join the Bureau in signing up to make a monthly donation to the American Indian Community Houses Mannahatta Fund. The Mannahatta Fund, according to its website, is an invitation to all settlers and non-native people who wish to acknowledge the legacy of theft and genocide that comprise the history of New York City and the United States. So you can find out more at mannahattafund.org. And now, Jonathan Ned Katz is a historian, activist, and visual artist. He has published 5 books on the history of sexuality and intimacy, most recently, The Daring Life and Dangerous Times of Eve Adams. He founded the free US LGBTQ public history website, outhistory.org, in 2008. In 2013, a solo exhibit of Katz's visual art was held at the Leslie Lohman Museum, New York City, and Katz published a memoir, Coming of Age in Greenwich Village. That show was curated by Jonathan David Katz, no relation. So please welcome Jonathan Ned Katz, and let's get started.
Thanks so much. Are we set up?
Almost.
Almost. The technologies.
Speak into the mic.
The technologies we all have to deal with every day now. And okay, so Thank you so much for coming. I want to celebrate tonight, old, queer, and kicking. At 85, I want to look back at my revealing child art archive. Tonight, I want to use my recent 85th birthday to publicly celebrate all of us who are old, queer, and kicking. And I include my queer heterosexual friends. Let's make this a public, collective exorcism of all the bad stuff we've heard and internalized about old. When in my mid-60s, I first started to talk publicly about aging in the gay community, I found myself referring to being older rather than old. The word old was loaded, was so repellent. So now now I say, let's take back old, the way, and transform it the way we've taken back queer and made it into a positive. Tonight, I hope that all of us will follow Walt Whitman, who says, I celebrate myself and sing myself. And he adds, I will go to the bank by the woods and become undisguised and naked. I am mad for it to be in contact with me. Whitman imagines a few light kisses, a few embraces, a reaching round of arms. Tonight, as my own form of public celebration, I want to look back from the perspective of old age, peering as a historian at the little queer boy child artist I once was. Little Jonathan got lots of praise from adults for his remarkable, precocious child art. He early learned, like lots of us, to look to others and to achievement for a basic positive sense of self. He didn't learn to value himself apart from others' praise, apart from any achievement. Little Johnny also struggled against his mother's undermining of his basic self-worth, his first active resistance against a variety of oppressions. Encouraged by his communist father, Jonathan early learned to struggle against what Daddy called prejudice and an unjust exploitative system. Jonathan early learned to march with his father and others for a more just world. Little Jonathan's child art documents that little queer boy's struggle. So let's take a look at it. That's a picture I did at about age 10. A blonde white boy bouncing a ball with a black young boy and a girl, red-haired girl in the middle. I was also, so already I was thinking about, a girl to two different race guys. I was thinking about, I was doing social art. I was influenced by Ben Shahn, whose first wife was a family friend. So, and I saw his art in the Museum of Modern Art. There's a famous one about Sacco and Vanzetti, the falsely accused anarchists who were murdered, executed. This is a painting of a woman, a black woman ironing And I had to go through in my head, my child head, and say, oh, she's ironing for herself. She's not a maid for a white family. Because my father had done an exhibit. My father was really ahead of his time as a white guy. He did an exhibit showing all of hundreds of images of Black people as every kind of like servant role that appeared in advertisements in the 1950s. And it was a shocking image that I remember. He was working on the exhibit and laid these pictures out on the wall. He was in the advertising business. He made a living as an art director. And so I was doing this image of this woman ironing. My father told me about men during the Depression having to sell flowers or anything in the street. So that's another socially conscious painting that this little queer boy was doing at around age 8 or 10. I was also very influenced by Henri Rousseau's paintings. They were called primitive art. They're hardly primitive. They're sort of untaught. And my father, would take me to the Met or to the Museum of Modern Art, and I would love the Henri Rousseau paintings in particular. A cat in the jungle, and there's one of the cat in the jungle, a lion or something, and a naked lady sitting on a sofa in the middle of the jungle. And I remember seeing that one. So I would say, oh, I could go home and do that. And I, did a painting like this with fish and a cat. A woman at an old stove. We had a stove exactly like this in the James Street house that we moved into in 1948. It got replaced and modernized, but I noticed, like, I had a design sense as a little arty boy. And it's interesting, my mother never looked anything like the lady at the stove. She never wore a house dress like this. This is a different image of a woman who was doing some work to provide for her family. This is a good woman. And there's another one of a similar type woman in a house dress that my mother never wore. So it was more an image of a more working class woman that I once saw. And again, there's like food and a refrigerator, different kinds. We guess we had a refrigerator that looked just like that. And I'm showing you, it's sort of remarkable as art for a young little boy in its quality. I joke that I have to live up to my queer boy art now when I do art. So my mother and me, and my mother's wearing a halter. My mother told me about mermaids. This is one of the weird things she told me in our intimate encounters. She talked about mermaids as women who sat on rocks in the ocean and lured sailors to their doom. So there's this mermaid wearing a halter, somewhat like my mother's. So there are, it's sort of embarrassing, these upcoming images of women. I'm a militant Marxist feminist. So we'll talk about, I'll talk about more about this. Theda Bara was a silent film actress, and I started to do a whole series of pictures of silent film history and never got further than Theda Bara. I guess a first queer boy icon. Now, my father took me to the Met, where I saw lots of pictures of naked ladies. So I went home and did one, and there's a still like painting in back of her. She's covered up so you don't see her bosom. Decorum was going on a little bit. She's sort of approaching a window. That's interesting. Anyway, a naked lady. Why was I doing that? All right, so this is really weird. There are these paintings of women stabbing themselves. It's some famous from the 1500s. It's some famous incident in history, in mythological history. And so I must have seen one of those paintings and then gone home and done a painting of a woman stabbing herself with her nipple showing. It's, if I was the parent, I would be sort of worried. Why did you do that? I don't remember anybody asking me that. Oh, now here is there's Lantern Boy, and he's sort of pushed to the side. The central figure is the sort of a version of Wonder Woman, or a superhero woman with these fabulous glasses and costume. And so I was very interested in powerful women. I made her central in this picture. Here's another. You can see I pasted Wonder Woman along with Superman. And it's in back, and that's me. My father was taking a trick picture of me poking my head out of a phonograph. And you can see on my wall these pictures of Wonder Woman. So there was this early, along with a critical view of some women, there was this interest in and affection for powerful women. Here, it's a collage with chicken feathers, and I called it female. And my mother and my aunt said, "Why are you calling it that? Is that what you think of women?" Because it's this snooty, sort of stuck-up, self-centered chicken. So I think I responded, no, I don't know why I called it that. I didn't know why. It's taken years of therapy to think about all about this. Which, of course, a block print of a linoleum print of a witch. Now here is a self-portrait, but it's very clownish. And I originally had the initials J.K. on the button of the clownish figure. And then I was looking at it, and I really didn't want to portray or see myself as clownish. And so I changed it to J.R. so it wouldn't be me. I didn't want that picture to be me anymore. So interesting. And here's another sort of clownish little boy figure, sort of in a slightly menacing jungle. It's also influenced by Rousseau. Balancing, a male balancing. I think very early on, I was trying, I was struggling. I was balancing anger at my mother, a deep affection for her. I think, because later on we'll see there's a couple more images of balancing people. Oh, and a sick boy. He's sick in his bed. He doesn't look so, he sort of looks not unhappy to be in his bed and get the attention of his relatives. I have no idea why I did a sick boy in his room. A soldier. This was done, it's on a giant piece of paper. I did it at the Little Red Schoolhouse that I attended in the village on Bleecker Street. It's still there, a progressive, very progressive private school. And it was in the middle of the Korean War. And my father was, he didn't think we should be, he said the South Koreans invaded the North. And that's really not, I don't think the way it happened, but why did I do a picture of a soldier at that point? I think I was asserting my masculinity credentials in doing this giant picture of a soldier of all things. And it shows something about my insecurity, I guess, about being male. My father, a nice little picture of my father, sort of looking stern, a bit stern though, I think, but I never did a portrait of my mother, though. I like this little portrait of my father. He was a big influence on me in terms, he had a deep interest in Black American history way before other people were talking about it, white people. So some of the teen art that I quickly will go over. I was an art student at Music and Art High School, and this was in the from 1952 to 1956. I was in the middle of a very repressive time period. And we artists and musicians who got into this public, prestigious school all felt so good about being in a school with other oddballs, artists of some kind. So I painted this picture of a sort of imaginary version of Music and Art. It was then at 137th Street and Convent Avenue. It's this like the City College buildings up there. It's a school, a public school now. And Music and Art is now combined into performing arts, and it's called LaGuardia, and it's in back of Lincoln Center. So I like that picture, glamorized picture of Music and Art. Again, balancing it. This is an older teenage boy balancing. I was trying to balance my I guess, suppressed sexual longings and desires and worries about masculinity. It wasn't masculine to be arty. That was, to get praise, to have that, my central way of feeling positive and getting praise. And that was a little, I should have been a soldier, and that my masculinity wouldn't have been in question. So a sort of satirical picture of one of the teachers at Music and Art, Mrs. Gottesman, history teacher, I think. Oh, two women gossiping. Again, sort of two satirical pictures of women gossiping together. A lovely painting of a young woman that I thought at the time I was in love with, sitting on a table, and my cousin Mimi, who was a sculptor, said, I don't see any body under that dress, and I didn't like that comment at all, because it suggested, which was true, I didn't know anything about women's bodies then at all. So was made me nervous, very nervous, like she was beginning to challenge something about my knowledge of sex and whatever. A really queer looking boy leaning against a wall. What's he doing out in the street? Waiting for a pickup? I don't know. I didn't know. A sort of clownish picture of myself then as a teenager in pajamas. And then to counter that, I did this really handsome portrait of myself that didn't look much like me, but it's very handsome. He is. So I was trying to, I was fooling around with my different feelings about myself and my value as a person through my art production. A boy looking out the window, a naked boy, thin, with red hair. I wanted to make sure my parents didn't think it was me for some reason, naked, looking out a window. I mean, looking out a window, there's a wonderful Allen Ginsberg poem that I think of in which his deceased mother says to him, "The key is on the window, Allen. The key is on the window." And that line has always deeply moved me. It's in a Allen Ginsberg play called Kaddish for his deceased mother. A nun in an urban landscape, looking down, not looking out. Another picture of a nun in Greenwich Village. I can tell it's Greenwich Village because there's a sign that begins to say R.I.E. Rienzi's was a coffee shop on McDougal Street that I went to around 10 or 11 at night as a Greenwich Village teenager and talked with my friend Margot about our future careers in the theater or whatever. Margot did become the head of a women's theater later on. We both went to a theater camp that we loved, and we both went to music and art. She was 1 year ahead of me. So let's see, young adult art. Oh, just to show you that as a young adult in my 20s, I heard that in 1962 that Andy Warhol had started to paint pictures of money. Somebody I knew Andy, and there's a portrait of him actually with Andy Warhol. And so I heard this, and I knew Andy Warhol was just painting, like reproducing a picture of money. And I said, oh, that's a good, I can make it a comment on capitalism, or so Death's Head, there's a Death's Head of Washington, it's looking sort of really ominous. So it's a comment about capitalism and money and the rule of money in our society. That's called Going Out of Business, and it's thinking about all the small shop owners that struggle to stay in business. I mean, the city is now filled with empty storefronts. They're really having a struggle. So I was a comment about that, calling it going out of business. The power elite, a politician in the front, a general next, and a businessman holding up dollars, profit motive as the main kind of motive in society. So that's my talk for tonight, and I hope that we can have comments and discussions. What Greg, do you have a sense of what time it is? What time is it? Oh, no.
Because I have to get my phone.
Oh, you have to get your phone. What?
7:35.
Oh, good. All right. So that's good. Anybody want to have comments? Yes.
What medium?
Oh, the child art is in tempera mostly. And I'm now working on my homoerotic art. I go here every Saturday to the center for years. I've gone to where there's a naked male model. There was a very thin, I love drawing this very thin guy a week ago. And you can look at my art, all of my art is on my art website, jnkart.com. So there's a whole, it's year by year. So you can look at the child art again, and you can see the art, the current queer art that I've started to do since 2005. I went back to figurative art. I never had figure drawing at Music and Art. It was the age of abstract expressionism. And they said, you don't need a try to learn to draw. No, just splash some paint like Jackson Pollock. So, but I've learned. I've gone to Harvey Redding's erotic drawing workshop at the Leslie Loman Museum. I went to that sometimes 2 times a week for 3-hour sessions. I've gone here for years on Saturday. I've had sessions in my own house. Yeah, I've done a lot of drawing to learn how to do it. Self-taught historian and self-taught artist.
Jonathan, did you have to submit a portfolio to go to that school at the time?
I did submit a portfolio. My cousin Mimi had gone to Music and Art before me, and so I sort of thought I would get in. I've been so much praised for my art, and indeed, when I opened this portfolio as a 13-year-old, I think, the teacher looking at it said to another teacher, "Come here, look at this, because it was really precocious and wonderful for a young kid to be doing."
Well, I'm just going to follow up with one question. It seemed to me a visit uptown from the West Village to the Met or the Museum of Modern Art. It sounds like you weren't drawing up there. To go see a painting and then come back to your home and paint, that involves some memory.
I did obviously think about questions about memory and seeing things in museums and then going home and trying a version of them. That's what I did. I did remember the one of the woman stabbing herself. It's amazing. I picked that one out. It was really spooky. And maybe it expressed some hostility that I wasn't able to express directly to this undermining that my mother did. So there were reasons I was doing stuff like that I now understand. Yeah. Speak up.
Yes, along with the memory, I'm taken by how vivid your memory is going back so far. Is that something that happens automatically, or do you get triggered by certain responses and memory goes from there?
Well, I've thought about my childhood I started thinking, I was this repressed teenager. So it wasn't until the day I was growing up in the village. I knew there were homosexuals all around. I had no idea. I didn't allow myself to think that my feelings were or desires were for men. I was totally repressed in a totally repressive era. And though I was growing up in the village, that's the way it was. I was drawing nuns, and now I'm now seeing the nun as an absolutely perfect representation of myself. So, what else?
Well, also, for example, the public story about your mother talking to you about mermaids for a young.
Well, it's stuck in my head for 85 years. I'm trying to go against. I've tried for years to, that's not my idea of women. I thought about this. In the old days, before gay liberation, we used to hear that a little boy's struggle against his mother's put downs or problems made him gay. All right, so it's ridiculous because like as if heterosexual men never had a struggle with their mothers, it's bizarre. It's really stupid. And also it assumes there's something wrong with ending up being gay. There's that also. So there's those two interesting ideas about it, which I did want to talk about tonight, sort of openly. I thought that was important. Yeah, I want to say also that I'm really interested in trying to find an archive for my queer child art, at least. I'd love it to end up, it's an unusual, complete archive of queer boy child art from a particular historical time period. That nun in Greenwich Village. Oh, it's amazing that I was doing that. And the woman stabbing her. Oh my God. So it's hard to find archives for art because it's expensive to preserve it. And so I'm publicly talking about that, much less an archive for my adult art, which I have like 15 feet of, because I work fast and a lot of it's really wonderful, I think. You can look at it on my art website, as I said. Yeah, more. Let's see if anybody else. Yeah.
The Children's Museum on Charlton Street does have a children's art collection.
Oh, thank you so much. I'll look into that.
Also, Leslie Lohman, would that not be a place?
I've approached Leslie Lohman and they said, well, we could take a few, but it's not the views. It's not the end of the world. Okay. So yeah, I've approached Leslie Lohman. I guess it's a burden to take on a large collection. Yeah.
Frankly, and I'm not, trying to patronize you. I think, the modern should exhibit stuff like this.
What
The modern should exhibit. Don't laugh.
I agree.
There were so many, things they haven't covered. So, I think they should go back. What I was gonna ask you is, so when did you embrace being gay and how did that happen? You were living in the village and then also becoming an historian. That's how I first encountered you.
Yes, and the fact that I was doing child art that was socially conscious, of course, that expressed an interest in society from the very beginning when I was 10 or so. And my father took me on May Day marches, which were for were workers' rights and higher wages and better working conditions. And maybe there were even signs against prejudice against Black people in those marches. Certainly that was a really influential part of my father's influence. He collected books about Black history, had many, and my brother became a historian of Black American history and also Indigenous American history, and wrote many books on the subject. So we were both deeply influenced by our communist father. I always hesitate to say that word because in the McCarthy period, it was a terrifying word if you were identified as a communist or socialist. I always say now I'm for economic democracy. I think that's a good way. I'm for all those words, socialism, there's such negative connotations to them. But I've been thinking about democracy a lot and how subversive the idea is. Anyway, so you asked me.
Also about, so embracing your gayness. When does that happen?
Yes, it happens when I was 18 and I finally slept with a guy for the first time. And then the next day I went to the window, looked out, which is like those paintings. And I was looking out at the world and I said to myself, homosexual, that word will always apply to me now. And it was a bad word at the time. I had some image in my head. It was the 1950s of a little house with a cottage and a dog and 2 children and a wife, and everything would be lovely and normal. Somehow part of me wanted to be normal. Maybe that I certainly learned from on my mother's side, and my father was the nonconformist, certainly in his politics. And yeah. Yes.
Was there a moment when you thought, I need to be honest with my parents? I need to tell them who I am? Was there a moment like that in your life?
Here's what happened. In the winter of 1971, I was in my 30s and I dared to step through the door of the church on 28th Street and 9th Avenue where the Gay Activist Alliance was meeting. And I was so nervous about going in there. Maybe you were at that meeting.
No.
Arnie Kantrowitz was there making wonderful speeches. And he said, "We're fighting for our lives," Arnie said. And I thought, we really are fighting. It's not a metaphor. I'm fighting for my life. By June 1972, the Gay Activist Alliance was putting on my documentary play Coming Out, exclamation point in the title. And the first version of the script has a pseudonym on it, John Swift. And then we all, as we started producing it, I realized you can't do a gay liberation with a pseudonym. So I took a deep breath and said, use my name, and some of the actors did the same. And sure enough, the Friday the play was to open, I got a call, my telephone rang. It was my mother. She'd seen an ad in the Village Voice for the play with my name on it. Is that you in the Village Voice? Yes. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you'd act like this. Anyway, homosexual with a hyphen in the middle for some reason. Yes. And oh, why do you have to flaunt it? I have to. And then she said, "I knew your father shouldn't have taken you on those marches." And she was right. My father taking me on those marches allowed me many years later to join up with other people and march when there were just a few of us in the early 70s. And I had no idea we were going to succeed as much as we have in getting desegregation laws against, like anti-discrimination laws against homosexuals, marriage. Oh my God, who would have thought? So yeah, it's a big change that I have gone through. And I guess it shows that I am a struggler, and that early struggle with my mother and the influence of my father, it's ended up being a good thing that I became a struggler. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any more comments? Or where are we in terms of time now? I wonder. Maybe it's
7:51,
what is it?
7:51.
Okay, I just thought it would be a lovely way to end tonight, this celebration, with a wonderful poem by my friend Edward Field called Proclamation. And Ed is watching, he's 97, and I think it's 97, maybe 98 now. He's watching from home. It's called Proclamation. At 86, I proclaim victory. I raise my fists above my head and proclaim victory, not over anything, but in life. I've emerged victorious in my life. It just occurred to me to be victorious. I am, that's all. I wish I thought of it before. It's so easy to just declare victory. And it's like the lights are switched on. You don't have to achieve anything. It's freedom from all that. Don't even have to do anything. Just raise your fists in the air and you're free of that supper you've taken over his consciousness. Look at my face. It's the face of victory. Amazing. I can declare victory anytime. The more I do it, the better I get at it. You don't have to proclaim it. Just raise your fists in the air. Everybody knows how. Raise your fists and declare victory. That's it. That's it. Thank you. Showbiz.
That's wonderful.
Oh, wait.
Wow.
Thank you. Thank you all for coming.
And happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Donna.
Sure, I'd love to have a chat with you. Let's just talk
Yeah.
about it that way.
Jonathan.